Sometimes we kids would crack the ice on purpose to go down into the caves. Grandma, she's so pissed when she found out. Said the night country was gonna take us.
So the stakes just hit a whole new high as connections between season 1 and 4 of True Detective continue to pile up. Now, as the mystery behind the Spiral cult continues to unravel before our very eyes, we gotta ask, will Rust and Marty return in the final episodes? Are the ghosts real? And is the Blue King watching? Welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and these are all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in True Detective Night Country, episode 5. Now, we open with a shot of an incinerator burning the body of Navarro's late sister, Jules, following her having taken her own life in the previous episode. Now, in our coverage of this series, we've talked a lot about hell and the devil. The Spiral cult is very reminiscent of a satanic cult, especially with the ritual we saw them perform in the first season. And the spiral itself can symbolize a 6, a number synonymous with Satan. Now, we've also talked a lot about an evil lurking beneath the ice, symbolizing the devil himself lurking in the depths of hell. So when Jules stripped down, folded her clothes, and walked out into the ice, she shared the same fate as the scientists. So this visual of her body being burned inside the incinerator could be another visual clue that Jules, like the scientists before her, fell victim to the evil lurking in Ennis. Now, in native cultures, cremation can be quite common. It's viewed as a way to help the dead enter into the afterlife, and it can also symbolize a return to dust. In Christianity and other creation myths, man comes from dust and is meant to return to dust. So cremation can be a fulfillment of one's return to dust upon death. When the ashes are handed to Navarro, the mortician says, "It's hot." Now, while the ashes are physically hot from the cremation, I think this line is really meant to symbolize a sense of warmth still being felt from Jules. Dead bodies are often cold, but this urn still being warm represents Navarro still having a connection with her sister, and that connection makes it to where her sister can live on through Navarro. Like in her memories? Yes, exactly. Now, we've talked a lot this season about how these ghosts throughout Ennis are meant to represent the memories of dead loved ones that haunt the ones they leave behind. So when Danvers goes to visit Otis at the rehab facility, he tells her that Clark kept repeating, "She's awake," which triggers Danvers to have a flashback to her dream about her son in episode 1.
She's awake.
Calling back to how Danvers is haunted by the death and memory of her son, and how his death is linked to the Annie case. Perhaps not literally connected, but emotionally connected. The resurgence of the Annie case has opened old wounds, and the pain of losing her son is starting to seep through. The Annie case is also spilling into the relationship between Danvers and her daughter, and Navarro and her late sister. You know, one thing this show doesn't touch on that much is just how depressing it is to be in nighttime all the time. Like, that's one of the reasons these characters are really grappling with these heavy issues. I mean, they're just depressed. So there was a stretch of like 2 years where I was depressed and anxious every single day, and that made me constantly nauseous. So I would just consistently put eucalyptus cough drops and breath mints into my mouth, which you are not supposed to do for a variety of reasons. And then, and this is true by the way, I kept doing that for years because it was a gross oral fixation habit. I got headaches, stomach problems, it wore away. You know what? It's gross and you get the point. But now I replaced that bad, gross habit with a positive one by using Fume. They're the sponsor of this video.
Is that a vape?
No, this is not a vape. It's not electronic, and it doesn't have pods filled with potentially harmful chemicals. Instead, it has these plant-based cores that are infused with natural flavors to create natural flavored air. I recently started crisp mint, and it even freshens my breath.
Yes, it smells very nice.
Thank you. You see, Fume uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. It's perfect for a New Year's resolution if you're looking to change your life. Plus, it has adjustable airflow and is designed with these movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, also giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for calming your anxiety. They also just launched the Fume Base. This is a sleek magnetic stand to rest your Fume on so you never lose track of it. Fume makes switching easy and even fun. They have thousands of 5-star reviews from their more than 150,000 customers who have used Fume to change their lives and switched when other solutions just didn't work. So head to tryfume.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush to get 10% off your Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with your choice of 3 to 6 unique flavor cores and everything that you need to finally be free of your bad habit. That's tryfum.com and use the code ScreenCrush to save an additional 10% off on your order today. Now back to True Detective. So when Otis tells Danvers about a cave-in, she says this line.
Something. Screaming, howling.
Now I think these men hearing screaming near the caves beneath the ice is a direct link to Annie. In the video of Annie, we see her in the ice caves, and when she's attacked, she lets out a scream. Now, the scream these men heard wasn't Annie. Otis says this happened 30 years ago, but I do think it could be evidence that the Spiral cult has been using the mines for trafficking women and children for decades. Otis says that when the men heard the screams, they went out into the ice toward the sound of the screaming, similar to how the Salal scientists ventured out into the ice. Now, the speculation has been that the scientists may have been running from something, but what if instead they were going toward something? What if they too heard the screams coming from the night country, and those very screams are what triggered the scientists to say she's awake? Perhaps they even heard the screams of Annie the night she was killed in the caves, and the new screams they heard were yet another victim of the cult, causing them to either run from or run toward the sound. Now here we can see Navarro has buckled up Jules's urn like a person. This is another example of how Navarro has yet to fully accept Jules's death and is still treating her as if part of her is still here. When Pryor is getting kicked out of his house for being so absent and missing Christmas, we can see in their kitchen this lurking crab hanging on the wall. Now, we've talked a lot about the Yellow King and his connection to Lovecraftian cosmic horror, and more importantly, the King's connection to the first season of True Detective and the Spiral Cult. And in this season, we have seen the Blue King Crabbing Company, which we think is a play on the Yellow King. Now, yellow would be more appropriate for the warm tone and Louisiana heat that the first season took place in, whereas blue would be more appropriate for the cold tone and blue color palette of this season. We also saw a drawing of what looked like the Yellow King in his crown back in episode 2, but it was drawn in blue marker. Now, I tell you all this because we think that this crab on the wall could be meant to represent the watching eye of the Blue King. Now, we've talked about the lurking eye of God in previous episodes from this season, so maybe the devil's watching too. The crab represents the Blue King, who we've also seen watching us in this drawing on the whiteboard. And the Blue King is, of course, connected to the Yellow King, which is connected to the Spiral, which is connected to Salal, the mine, and the death of Annie. Now, crabs are bottom feeders that can live deep in the ocean, like the evil beneath the ice. The crab could be meant to represent Cthulhu, a cosmic entity from Lovecraftian horror that we have discussed in previous breakdowns. Now, Cthulhu imagery could be found in True Detective Season 1, and the character is closely connected to Aster, aka the Yellow King. Plus, Cthulhu lives at the bottom of the ocean, just like a crab, and just like the evil beneath the ice that's lurking in the caves. And it was also the ocean that took Jules.
Walked onto the sea, just walked.
So now I want to break down the song that we hear Hank singing.
There's no God.
The first line is, "There is no God." Now, in the first episode of this season, we got a quote from a fictional character from the novel The King in Yellow, which read, "For we do not know what beast the night dreams when its hours grow too long for even God to be awake." Now, we took this to mean that the evil that was about to unfold would happen in the absence of God. This line also calls back to a common theme between Season 1 and 4 of True Detective, where we hear discussions about the existence of God.
Oh, come on. You kidding me? You talk to God.
Yeah, well, if the common good's got to make up fairy tales, then it's not good for anybody.
Discussions on the existence of God also play into the Lovecraftian nature found in books like The King in Yellow, as well as shows like True Detective. Stories in this genre of cosmic horror keep the reader wondering if something supernatural is afoot, and different people have different interpretations of whether paranormal activity is actually taking place.
Oh, give me that. Voodoo, E.T., cosmic, Shoompa Loompa, bullshit.
So the next line of the song says, "There is no king." Now, I took this to be a reference to the king in blue or yellow and the Spiral cult's delusions in worshiping said king. "There is no star" is also a connection to the Spiral cult. The stab wounds found in Annie were star-shaped, and the night sky of Carcosa is filled with dark stars. Remember, Carcosa is the place the Spiral symbolizes and that Russ saw in Season 1. Next, we see a protest taking place at the mine, and Navarro is put in a position where she has to choose a side. So this whole season, Navarro, as both a native woman and a police officer, has been torn between these two conflicting sides. And when Navarro gets in a fight with this trooper while protecting Leah, we get a physical representation of the conflict that has been building within her all season. When Danvers has her daughter booked for participating in the protest, at first I thought it was Danvers' way of teaching her daughter a lesson. But after giving it just a little more thought, I think the real reason is that Danvers is desperate to keep her daughter safe, and locking her away in a cage is the only way she knows to keep her from getting into any more trouble or getting murdered like Annie. Danvers locking Leah up mirrors how she made Leah wipe off her native chin markings. Now, Danvers knows it isn't right to make her daughter wipe away a symbol of her heritage, but she justifies it because she's trying to protect her from suffering the same fate as Annie. Now, next we get another reference to Tuttle United.
I followed their tax returns, and they trace back to Tuttle United.
Now, we heard Pryor mention Tuttle United in a previous episode here.
Which in turn
belongs to Tuttle United.
Tuttle United is connected to the Tuttles of Season 1, who were heavily connected to the Spiral Cult and their heinous acts against women and children. Now here we learned that not only does Tuttle United fund Salal, but they're also connected to the Silver Sky Mine, finally confirming that the two are connected, perhaps even physically connected, through the ice caves. In Leah's holding cell, we can see a game of Hangman drawn on the wall. Now this first word is definitely cold, but we have like no idea what this other word is. We've tried enhancing, brightening, I asked your mom, and we just can't figure it out. So I turn it over to you, my little true detectives. What the heck do you think is this other word? Comment down below. I do think it's interesting that the person in the cave was playing Hangman by themselves, because Hangman is normally a game that is played with 2 or more people. Now we can also see drawn on the wall here this creepy looking devil face. Another hint that the devil is watching our characters, just like the Blue King, the Crab, and even these hexagons from last week's episode.
Not the bears!
So we're of the opinion that there is a real world explanation for what happened to the Salal scientists, and that the suggestion of something supernatural is just that, a suggestion. But having said that, there is no way this BS about an avalanche is what actually happened.
It was a weather event. Slab avalanche. They're sudden and can move at 100 miles an hour.
So in episode 3, we finally learned about the Wheeler case, the case that drove Danvers and Navarro apart.
Navarro couldn't get over it. She was convinced that there was something we should have done.
We theorized at the time that Navarro and Danvers did something similar to Rust and Marty back in season 1. When Marty and Rust found one of the Spiral Cult members, Marty blew his head off after cuffing him because he was consumed with rage after finding the children chained up in a trailer. And Rust helped Marty cover this up so he would not get in trouble. Well, it would appear that the same thing definitely happened here, and Danvers helped to cover up Navarro killing Wheeler. And Peter Pryor pieced this all together. And props to Pryor for showing true detective potential by piecing this all together.
Did you and Navarro shoot William Wheeler?
So now, Hank also knows the truth because he got on Peter's laptop, found the evidence, and reported it to Ted, and now they can use it as blackmail.
Except there was no suicide, was there?
Now when Navarro is washing clothes, the way they are spun together creates a spiral-like image, and she has a vision of a woman's hair being pulled under while screaming. Now this symbolizes a few things. The spiral nature of the spun together clothes and the hair being pulled into the center could be meant to symbolize Annie or Jules being pulled into Carcosa or Hell, and the washing machine being connected to the dirty water, which comes from the pipes beneath the ice, which is meant to symbolize them being pulled down into the caves or the night country, or being pulled into the ocean like Jules, all of which are beneath the ice. Now this is backed up by the next scene where we learn that these spiral symbols drawn on rocks were meant to be warning signs to stay away from ice that will swallow you whole.
People would leave them as a warning for hunters, places where the ice would swallow them whole.
The spiral symbol, representing a whirlpool of sorts, is fitting to identify spots where the ice will swallow up the ocean. But it's also fitting because below the ice, you can also find the caves connected to the Spiral Cult. And falling into the ocean may be preferable to falling into one of their caves.
We're all in the night country now.
With the night country being the underground tunnels, perhaps these rocks were left by members of the cult to identify entry points from atop the ice down into the tunnels. After all, we did get a lot of imagery this episode showcasing busting holes in the ice to gain access to underneath.
We just have to find the highest point on the cave maps. That's how you get into an underground cave system.
In this scene, Navarro says to Danvers,
"You carry her now."
Another callback to how Annie is now haunting Danvers the same way she's been haunting Navarro. Now in season 1, we saw Marty and Rust reach a point where they went rogue to finally bring down the cult, and we're about to see Navarro and Danvers do the same. Here, Hank talks to Peter about a time when he fell through the ice as a boy. This is Hank's way of reminding Peter that he's his father, he's his blood, and trying to remind him of a time that he saved his life, all in hopes that Peter will do the same and side with his father, his blood. Peter literally fell through the ice and Hank saved him, and now we know that Hank has metaphorically fallen beneath the ice by working with the mine and the cult to cover up the murder of Annie. So the same way that Hank pulled Peter from the ice all those years ago, he's now looking for his son to help pull him up from the ice, and also the evil beneath that haunts him. And then we get this fantastic song, Warm Shadow by Fink, which I first heard in The Walking Dead season 3. This song was used in The Walking Dead Season 3 over a scene where Rick Grimes decided it was time to go to war with the governor in order to protect his people. Rick's attempt to do things civilly were over. Now we've seen something similar pan out here with Navarro and Danvers and their realization that if they're going to solve the Annie case, they're going to have to go to war. They're going to have to step outside of the law. The lyrics are, "What you got going on behind those eyes closed." Now this fits perfectly with the theme of this entire season taking place at night and within a horrible dream. A callback to the opening quote of the season season, which speaks of the beast the night dreams and hours too late for even God to be awake. Nightmares and illusions of ghosts are often used in this season, as well as the imagery of open and closed eyes, and how the single eye in native culture represents an ability to see in the darkness. The next line is "holding on," a reference to Navarro and Danvers' inability to let go of the past. Danvers with her son, Navarro with her mother, and now both of them with Annie. And the next line is "I don't want another day to break. Take our, steal our night away," which implies that Danvers and Navarro are determined to solve this case before the long night ends, and that they won't allow the evils that lurk in the shadows to take the night, aka get away with murder. So when Navarro buries Jules' ashes in the ice, this is another representation of beneath the ice being a place of death. When Danvers visits this room of yet-to-be-buried caskets, we see the name of one of the stillborns caused by the mine's pollution was Noah. Now, Noah in the Bible, of course, was associated with a world flood. So the child being named Noah ties it with this season's social commentary on climate change and melting ice and rising oceans. When Hank confronts Danvers at her home so he can kill Otis, we see Peter put in a position where he has to kill his own father. And oh my God, was this a tragic scene. Hank knew that if he raised his gun at Danvers that Peter would have no choice but to shoot him. Hank essentially used his son to take his own life because he saw no other way out. And we even hear Hank repeat this line about blood being blood.
Blood is blood. Blood is blood, Peter.
Now, we've theorized before that perhaps the Pryors are related to the families associated with the Spiral cult, like the Tuttles and Childress. So maybe this was Hank's final warning to his son to fall in line, or an attempt to explain that he had no choice in committing the evil acts that he did. So guys, those are all the Easter eggs that we caught in the penultimate episode of True Detective Night Country. Big shout out to the writer of this video, Mr. Colton Ogburn. You can find his socials below. So tell me what you think is going on here. How do you think this season's going to end? Let me know in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.